What's going on, everybody? I'm Max Ralph.
Seth Engle.
Back for the first time in a little bit with a 1-0 podcast. Well, we were going to talk special teams today, start doing a position preview thing. We'll still get to that, but a ton of things happened today before we hopped on this pod. Well, I guess I'll start. Trace McSorley getting the preseason nod for the Cardinals in their opener. That's kind of cool. Good for him. I like him being in Arizona. I mean, him and Kyler Murray are kind of like the same style quarterback. So I think that's cool. So good for him that he's getting that start. But the big news and some pretty bad news for Penn State, 4-star defensive end edge prospect, Tamarian T.J. Parker out from Alabama, committed back in June, decommitted from Penn State today. That was a pretty big loss. And I was a big fan of his film. And I thought he was a great pickup when they got him, and now he's gone, and that stinks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right off the bat, when we watched this film, we loved him. I mean, the guy's big, but he's also super athletic, and he was one of my favorite players Penn State had picked up. I was super excited to see him in the future, lining up with Deni Dennis Sutton on that edge. Unfortunately for Penn State, decommits. The question that I have right now is because he's an Alabama guy. Dakari Nelson, who's another Alabama guy, defensive back, he committed a few days after Parker did.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's going to be some sort of trend. The other question I have is what led to this? Because Parker was on campus on July 30th. He was participating in camps. He was very active there and decommitted. I'm wondering, does this have something to do with NIL? Because Tamir Robinson also tweeted right as, the announcement came out that said it's NIL that's like making us lose all these players. And it's been a rough, last few weeks for Penn State, just on the recruiting trail generally. This one probably hits harder than I think any other, loss they've had.
Yeah, the Tamir Robinson tweet was really funny because I've got him on push notifications on Twitter, and he tweeted, man, NIL is like the only reason we're losing our players, something to that effect. And then I was like, what's going on? Somebody's going to decommit, aren't they? And then
30 seconds later.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden TJ is gone. Just like you said, like I mentioned briefly, he was a really good athlete on the edge. He looked like he was ready to play college football already, and he's only a junior in high school. It hurts when you look at this past month of recruiting. It's been bad. I mean, there's really no other way to say it other than it's been bad. I mean, you look at Marcus Stokes decommitted and flipped, Joshua Miller decommitted. That was a while ago, but there's just been some things that we thought were materializing and didn't. Stokes, Joshua Miller, Mel Parker, Yazid Haynes flipped. Missed out on Evan Link, who we thought was probably going to pick Penn State for a while. Trayon Webb. Yeah, Naquil Betron, a Philly kid, big offensive tackle. Things have just really not gone well for Penn State lately. And then you mentioned Dakari Nelson being that other Alabama guy. I read a while back that he was supposed to take a visit to another school. I don't know for sure if that happened. I don't know if you'd be able to pull that up. But yeah, I think it's NIL. I mean, obviously Tamir Robinson thinks it's NIL. And who knows? I know in the past, like James Franklin, he was talking to Big Ten Media Days. So you talk about this. I asked him a question that was like, has it become harder to hold on to commits for a long time? Whether it's NIL, whatever it is, because Drew Alder's recruitment came up at Big Ten Media Days. Drew committed way early in the cycle before he was getting all the eyes he is now. And I asked James, I said, hey, like, has that become harder? And he said, yeah, I think it has for a number of reasons. Where I'm at as a recruiter is I try to convince kids not to commit. Like he tries to tell them, we want you to be all in when you commit, and we're going to be the same way. We're going to keep our relationship with you, and we want you to keep it with us. And so I'm not thinking these past few weeks have made him a happy guy. And, the other thing at Big Ten Media Days, Pat Kraft pretty candidly said Penn State was behind in NIL. It was one of the first things he said in his availability at Big Ten Media Days. Like, he was just flat out, Penn State's behind in NIL. And maybe that's why this class is hurting a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's interesting because when we look back to when we recorded, it was right after Robinson and Rojas committed. We hopped on a pod and we're saying, okay, the class is looking pretty complete right now. They just got to get some finishing touches here. And when we look at it now, it's not that at all.
No.
There are clear holes in the class.
Mm-hmm.
Offensive line, they have the interior guys like Birchmeyer
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Javen Williams. It's all
Mm-hmm.
great there.
They
There's
need
a
an out.
huge hole at tackle there.
It is.
And that's something they
Yeah.
did not capitalize on. And we mentioned, Evan Link and Naquil Betron. Those were guys that they needed to pick up, just to fill the tackle spots there. Wide receiver is now all of a sudden becoming a hole.
Huge hole.
Yazid Haynes, I mean, he was low, like based on like just sole rankings, but I mean
Yeah.
his film was good and he's a body that you put in that room.
And
And
he was quick.
really
He, when he camped at Penn State, he was running like an upper 4.3. Like that. He
yeah,
was legit rising up rankings. And another guy I forgot to mention that they missed out on recently was Justin Brown, wide receiver who ended up going to Mississippi State, I think, last week.
right.
Like you said, there's holes. I mean,
Yeah.
and quarterback, we haven't even touched on Jackson Smolik yet.
I
The
think that
whole
should come to fruition pretty soon. If I'm
I
being
agree. I agree. I think there's a lot of good momentum for Penn State. Jackson Smolik, quarterback, class of 2023. His name came up a lot as soon as Marcus Stokes decommitted. He's a current Tulane commit. Kind of came out of nowhere. He hails from Iowa, but he competed at Elite 11. He was a last minute addition there, and he ended up placing like really well at the Elite 11 quarterback camps. So Penn State's been on his radar. He received an official offer, not long ago. And I agree with you. I think that's going to maybe come together soon.
Yeah.
But as
So
far as, go ahead.
yeah, so I was just gonna say, wrapping up recruiting wise, Dakari Nelson did take a visit to Ole Miss at the end of July.
Yeah.
Just something to keep an eye on. You know, they're two different people. Parker and Nelson, you kind of connect them just based on the fact they committed in the same week and they're both from Alabama.
Yeah.
Just keep an eye on him. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. As far as this class goes, like it's dire right now. Like this is the end of the 2023 recruiting cycle. Signing day is coming a lot sooner than you think. And there's not, outside of Smolik, there's not a lot. Defensive tackle is another spot that Penn State's kind of missed a lot of potential guys on. Even defensive end, you look back at the Jason Moore, stuff like that. Will Norman is kind of the only name that's really still popping up a little bit around Penn State, but he hasn't visited. It doesn't look great, even though he's from the area. Apparently his mom really wants him to come to Penn State, but not great momentum there unless something changes. It's really not, it's not great.
Yeah.
It's not great for Penn State. But that leads us into our next topic for the day. That was just kind of some breaking news that happened today that we had to cover. We're going to start a series here ahead of the season, previewing each position group at Penn State for the 2022 roster. Start today with special teams. We were in Happy Valley last weekend for Penn State's media day, and there was a lot of spotlight on special teams because let's be honest, Penn State lost Jordan Stout, and it's a hell of a lot of production that you have to fill. I mean, he was an elite kicker and punter.
Yeah.
You don't find those guys. I mean, Stacey Collins even said it. He simply said, "You don't just replace Jordan Stout."
Yeah, he's like a Shohei Ohtani of special teams.
Yeah.
It really creates these two holes here. The room is deep. Like there are options.
There are.
But I don't think that there's anyone that's really standing out like that much in any regard. I think punter is probably the one position that we can kind of assume right now who's going to be the starter on day one.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be Barney. Barney Amore. That's Franklin said he was in the lead. We're only 24 days away from week one.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so like we're nearing the end here. Like there's not that much time for a competition. I think at this point Barney's probably going to be that day one starter at punter.
Yeah.
The weird thing to me is that kicker position, especially place kicking is
Mhm.
weird. Just Jake Pinniger had the starting spot a couple of years ago, has stuck around for a while. It was expected that he would kind of just take over once Jordan Stout left.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be like a given,
Mhm.
which is just weird because of how long he's been on the roster.
Yeah.
Who else do you like in that place kicking room?
Yeah. I mean, it's between Pinniger and Sanders Zahedic, who I believe is a redshirt freshman. I think he's in his second year here.
Yeah.
Um, like Sahedic is a young guy who Penn State's excited about. He's got a big leg. He's lefty. Actually, the kid Penn State's bringing in the 2023 class, Ryan Barker, is also a
Oh,
lefty.
he's got a leg. He's got a
Yeah,
leg.
yeah. He tweeted something the other day of him kicking from 60,
Yeah.
hitting. So, but anyway, back to Sahedic. Like he's gonna kick at Penn State in the future, like 100%. I'm 100% confident in that. Jake Pinniger, like you said, like you'd think he'd just be a lock at this point. But he's not. I expect Pinniger to be the starter in week 1. I think he's probably in the lead right now, but I wouldn't be shocked if he loses that job. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
pressure on him. And also something that came up at media day on Saturday was, are you going to do the same thing that you did in 2020 with Pinniger and Stout, where Pinniger handles everything from 49 yards and in, whereas Stout handles everything longer? It might have been 49. It could have been 39. I don't remember exactly,
Right.
but that came up. Stacey Collins was like, well, we don't know. Like we could do that if we need to, but we don't know right now. So my prediction is Jake Pinniger starts. And if he does well, he'll hold the job, but he'll have a short leash, and Sahedic will be right behind him. And I wouldn't be shocked to see the Sahedic handles long stuff, Pinniger short stuff. I don't think that's what they'll want to do, but if they have to, they'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, whatever gives them the best chance of winning, as Frank would say.
Yeah, yeah.
As for kickoffs, we're talking big legs here. There's no one bigger than Gabe Nwosu.
Gabe
This guy
Bosu.
is 6'6", 270. Like he's not. He doesn't look like your regular special teamer. He's also a redshirt freshman. He's like 19, 20 years old.
Yeah,
He's massive. Dude's got a leg.
yeah.
I think he handles kickoffs.
I do too. And I think he was the first name Stacey Collins mentioned on Saturday when kickoffs came up. So I think he's probably the first name there right now. But I didn't talk about punter at all. Alex Paqueta, that true freshman punter, came in, has a massive leg. Has looked pretty good so far. I think he's in play for kickoffs as well. And
Yeah.
he's probably in play at punter too. I think Barney, like you
Oh
said,
yeah.
Barney's the guy. He'll start week 1. He had a fairly successful career at Colgate before he transferred to Penn State. So I don't think Barney's going to put them in a bad position at all at punter, but he's still not Jordan Stout.
Yeah. I think the goal is for Paqueta to eventually turn into that Jordan Stout type of role where he's pretty much handling everything. Maybe he's not doing place kicking, but
Yeah,
at least kickoffs and punting.
I agree. Yeah. So yeah, I think as of now, there's still some questions that need to be answered when we hit the field, but as of right now, I think there's clear leaders at all 3 phases there. I think it's Barney, Pinniger, and Nwosu for
Yeah.
punting, kicks, kickoffs.
I agree. What does get a little choppy though, and we'll move away from kickers a little bit here, is when you start to look at gunners, because you talk about Jordan Stout
Yeah.
being so important to that special teams unit, both in punting and kicking. Drew Hartlob was as important on the
Yeah.
defensive side of the ball there.
Yeah.
The dude
When,
runs a 4.22. Like that's not something you just like replace.
yeah.
I
And
mean, it's
AJ
not
Litton too.
right. And AJ Litton too on the other side coming down, like both left. Those are guys that are not easily replaceable.
Hmm.
We asked Stacey Collins about it. He said speed is not everything. There are other intangibles, just football intangibles, and different type, like knowing the game and like knowing the speed and like, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
there's all this like IQ kind of stuff. He went on a whole football tangent. But there's been
Stacey Collins, big football guy.
yeah, it's just a surprising name came up when talking about Gunner, and that was Malik Mega.
Yeah.
And that was someone I thought was interesting because he's not necessarily the fastest guy on the team,
Yeah. He's got deceptive speed.
Yeah, but he's big. You know what I mean?
Huge. 6'4", 200 or something.
So that's a guy, I mean, when Stacey Collins said speed is not everything, there are other intangibles that go into it. And I think about Malik Mega. I mean, that's a guy, if he gets to you, like,
yeah,
I mean, it could be scary. Other people that stand out to me, I think Amari Evans. I don't know how he is necessarily. I know he played defense a little bit in high school, but just adjusting to like fully being that guy that just shoots out of the cannon. It seems like he's the fastest guy on the team right now, so you kind of have to give him a chance there, I guess.
Yeah.
He's also really young, so I mean those are two names that stand out to me right now.
Yeah, I don't know with Omari though. Like gunner seems like a fairly insignificant position for like a casual football fan, but I also don't know if it's a spot that you really want a true freshman to be starting in week one.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we'll see that. Daquan Hardy, a lot of people are talking about his speed lately. Like that came up a lot. Daquan Hardy could fill into that role. Another corner, Johnny Dixon. Johnny Dixon is a story that we will touch on more when the cornerback room preview comes up. But James Franklin went out of his way to say that Johnny Dixon is having a nice camp. That's a heck of an endorsement because James Franklin does not he doesn't go off and say those kinds of things often. So that's good. And he's got good speed. Everybody talks about his speed too. I think you'll see some combination of Mega, Hardy, and Dixon, at least to start the year there. Marquise Wilson could do it too, another corner. Right. So I think you'll see that. Then kick and punt returners, fairly certain we know who's going to handle that stuff. Punt returns, we saw it in the Outback Bowl. Parker Washington probably going to take that over, continue his next step. He's basically Jahan Dotson now, number one receiver, punt returner. He's just doing all the same stuff. Omari Evans, Caden Saunders. We've seen guys like that take punt returns in practice. But I think Parker Washington's the number one. And as far as kick returns go, it's Devin Ford. I mean, he's been doing it for a while, and I think he's going to keep doing it. But Nick Singleton is also probably a name to watch there. And maybe a little bit of Kevon Lee. Kevon's done it a few times too. So I think Devin Ford and Parker Washington are your number ones in both spots, but there's other names to watch.
Yeah, I'm liking Singleton's name to pop up there in kick returns. Maybe not at the very start, but like eventually. Daquan Hardy too. I think he's a guy you can slot in either of those, punt or kick returner. Especially if his speed going into this fall is the real deal.
Yeah.
He's a guy I think you could see all over the special teams unit.
Yeah, no, and like I think it's deceptive speed for him because he plays that nickel corner spot. Like you don't necessarily see him running down
get
the
field.
Out
that often.
Right. Yeah, and people talk a lot about his speed lately. So it's interesting. There's so much turnover on special teams. I mean, Jordan Stout did 3 things last year that could be done by 3 different people this year.
And it probably will be.
Yeah. So but as far as kick and punt returns go, that's fairly steady with how it has been. So there's a lot to look at on special teams this year. Usually it's a fairly overlooked position, but it's going to be really important to Penn State's success this fall.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for us. Big TJ Parker decommitment today, a little bit of recruiting talk. Things aren't great there. And the first position preview special teams today. We'll be back soon with, I think offensive line might be our next one. I have to check, but we'll be back soon. Stick with us. 1-0 podcast. We're on Twitter at PSU Footblog and 1-0 Pod, and online at collegian.psu.edu. Peace out.